Now turning to our program, please welcome Jeff Fleming, Director of Communications for the Office of Mayor Cavalier Johnson, to introduce our speaker.
Thank you, Ken. It is my great pleasure to introduce Director of Port Milwaukee, Jackie Q. Carter. Jackie is held in the highest esteem within Milwaukee City government. She is a decisive problem solver and, as Mayor Johnson has said, an all-star in his cabinet. Jackie has risen through the ranks in various budget and finance positions over the last 17 years at City Hall. When the Port Director position opened up about 2 years ago, she was a clear choice to take over. Her appointment broke with tradition. She is obviously not a white male with a background in the shipping industry. What she has brought to Port Milwaukee is a no-nonsense approach to adapt and grow business for the benefit of the city and the entire region. Jackie is a graduate of Alverno College and earned an MBA from Concordia University. In recent months, the mayor tapped her to serve as his appointee on the Social Development Commission as that organization navigates some very long-standing challenges. That reflects his admiration and his trust in Jackie. Jackie and her husband, Eddie, live in Milwaukee's Arlington Heights neighborhood. Jackie is strongly guided by her faith, and that, along with her integrity, her backbone, and her drive, have established her as a leader in the city, now and into the future. It's my pleasure to welcome Port Milwaukee Director Jackie Q. Carter.
Well, good afternoon. I like this room for a lot of reasons, but one of them, this is the first time I didn't have to adjust the mic down. I like it. But thank you, Jeff, for that great introduction. I had to go back in my bag and get another tissue because I almost lost it there for a minute. But I want to first say thank you all for having me here today. This is an incredible space to be in, and I'm very privileged and grateful for the opportunity to stand before you. What I want to share with you, first, let me just take a moment because, as Jeff said, faith is what really grounds me. And for me, a young African American woman who grew up a little girl in the inner city of Milwaukee, to be able to stand in this room, we have overcome a lot of things. So I just want to give it up for that. And of course, I give all credit to the grace and mercy of God. So I always want to start there. But I want to kind of start with a little bit of quick facts because I was told that this is not the room to bring a recycled PowerPoint. These are folks who probably seen some presentations. They've probably been the doors open because we participate in that. They probably, watched some budget hearings. They know a little bit about a lot of things about the port. So we need some new information. So for those of you who've seen some of that stuff, I want to give a real quick just refresher. And for those of you who haven't seen, I won't call you slackers, but somebody might. We're going to give you the quick Cliff Notes version of Port Milwaukee. So we are the Port Milwaukee is a city of Milwaukee department, as you know, 467 acres of land. So that image on the screen there is now not all of that because y'all can see the city is really in the background. We don't monitor all of that, but our property basically extends from the steps of the Calatrava, and that's the northern border, all the way to the south, just a little bit south past our administration building. And you can mark our building because it's the only building in the city of Milwaukee that has a wind turbine. So that's the Port Administration Building. We handle about 2.5 million metric tons of cargo on an annual basis. Our oversight committee is the Board of Harbor Commissioners, a 7-member board. 6 of them are appointed by the mayor of Milwaukee. 1 represents the Common Council. And we actually have a board meeting this week, so we got to get back and get ready, right? We have a port staff of about 21. We are a landlord port. And why that's important is because some ports you go to, they are operating ports, meaning they not only own the land, and they also run all the businesses that operate on the land. We do not. So we lease land to private businesses, and then we partner with them to grow their business. We have 16 Seaway Max docks, so that's 16 berth spaces for vessels to come in. We offer covered storage, lay down space, and we have lots of, I shouldn't say lots, but we have some available parcels for long-term lease. So that is really the gist of our business. But I want to get into, again, this is going to be a little bit of a different presentation. So I want to talk about the advantages and the challenges of the maritime industry. And I know the slide says advantages and challenges, and there's one column. And the reason is because the advantages are the challenges are the advantages. And I'll talk about that. So maritime is a very traditional industry, right? So of course, with me being the first woman in the city of Milwaukee, first person of color, that is not uncommon across the nation. So I go into rooms a lot of times, I am the only woman, or I'm the only person of color, or both. So that's not different. We've got a lot of work to do yet. The benefit of having a tradition is that there's a history there, right? There's something that you can trace back. You know why certain decisions were made. One of the downsides to that is there's a paper trail, and I'm talking about a literal paper trail. Lots of hard copy documents. The traditional industry has really resisted um, embracing technology and new ways of doing things. So that's one struggle. We are a small team with long tenure, and that can be great. 21 people, everybody knows everybody. But then the problem is that everybody knows everybody, right? So you kind of know what's going on with other people. That can kind of shift how things are going. You can really rally some support or resistance around certain things. And so we have to be really strategic about how we move. When I came to the port, this small team had 3 employees who between them had about 125 years of port experience. So imagine the kind of things we've had to overcome in trying to change the way that we do business. The port has the benefit of being accessible by 2 different bodies or 2 different systems of water. So the Great Lakes St. Lawrence Seaway system and the Inland River system. The disadvantage is we are one of the most inland ports on both of those systems. And so we have to be thoughtful about how we market. What I learned during my appointment process is that we are also one of Milwaukee's best kept secrets. And that's cool if you're a resident, but it's bad for business, right? And so we're looking to try to change that. We are a part of city government, and I want to be real clear, Jeff, because I don't want anybody going back and telling the mayor I said being part of city government was a challenge. That's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying here is we are part of city government, so the benefit of that is we have support behind us. We have people who we're accountable to, who hold us accountable for the work that we do. But as a department that operates like a business, it can be difficult for the people who we work with in the industry to really understand some of the requirements that we have. So that's one thing. And then multimodal infrastructure. We pride ourselves on having access to the water, to rail, and to road. So to whom much is given, much is required. And when I say that, I mean maintenance, right? So we have a lot of upkeep that we have to do in terms of the port. And I want to share a little bit about the vision that I have as the leader of Port Milwaukee. So coming in, I just kind of talked about the challenges. We're looking at all those things. How do we overcome these things? How do we continue to do business? We had some good momentum. There were some great projects going. How do we change that? How do we become more efficient? And so what I really wanted to do, I kind of, I was a member of the team when, I took this role. So there was this whole odd transition of going from peer to now the people that I was peers with now report to me. So we had to kind of find our groove. What is that going to feel like? But how we kind of managed that is we really refocused on the mission. So let's not make this about each of us or our ideas. What is the mission? And so the mission of Port Milwaukee is to strengthen the overall economic and social environment of the city and region by increasing international trade, business development, job creation, and public access to the waterfront. That's a lot for 21 people, but we've got a plan to get it done. We're working with our partners to make it happen. So one of the things we wanted to do was get into some more data-informed decision making. We're making a lot of decisions based on what the last person did, but we really didn't know why. This is the way we've always done it. I hate when people say that to me. So we want to really get away from that. And we really wanted to start to become more consistent and more predictable. And I know sometimes that's people say that's bad for business, but it's good for us, and I'll tell you why as we kind of go along. We also wanted to restructure how we made decisions. So in our office or in our department, we have office staff and then we have operations staff. The office staff are making decisions that impact the operations staff, but the operations staff didn't really have a lot of input. So we had to change that. How do we change the structure of our meetings? Bring the folks who are kind of our boots on the ground folks into the building. So we demonstrate that in a number of different ways. One of them is today. I've got members of different parts of our team here. Normally we bring our marketing and trade development folks, but we got someone from finance, someone from operations, someone from administration here because we want them to experience the whole of the department. So because I believe that that just broadens their perspective. So when it's time to make decisions, they're better informed. They start to understand why, and so things become a little bit easier. I wanted to empower the managers to really collaborate and cross-train with their employees. Operations and engineering at the port. So we have 4 divisions. There's administration, finance, operations, and engineering. Well, operations and engineering really overlap quite a bit. The only difference is one works on computers and the other ones are out there getting it done, right? But they needed to be talking to each other. And so we had to really change the format of how we do things. So we brought the operations folks inside, set them down with engineering. So they meet on a regular basis to talk about some of the things that they're challenged with. How do we address these? How do we move forward? And then I think one of the biggest ones was reestablishing the relationship with our tenants, talking a little bit about the tradition of the industry and how folks see us as a landlord port. That relationship can feel very transactional, and we really wanted to get away from that because the way our business works is if our tenants do well, we do well. So it makes sense that we help them do well. So we wanted to kind of start changing the framework and doing some collaboration, being a little bit more proactive, being thoughtful. So one of I'll just point out those images there. Congresswoman Gwen Moore came to the port, and I was adamant that she get a shot with the operations folks. And we had a whole moment. It was one of these big things on social media, but it meant a lot to those guys because they never get to be involved in those kind of meetings. They kind of see the stuff on social media. This important person was there, and we're never involved, but we're the ones that are making it happen. So we want to make experience like that happen for our team members. We also have the lower level picture or the bottom picture. That was a picture where Secretary Pete Buttigieg came to the port. We brought all our tenants in to do a roundtable, and they were able to discuss some concerns that they had directly with him. Because we don't always want to be carrying their water, but we want them to trust us to be able to do it. So getting them in the room, putting them around the table with high level leaders, the mayor and the Secretary of Transportation, that meant a lot to them, right? But also getting back into regular meetings with them. And then we started kind of shifting the perspective. So one of the things we talked about with sustaining the people. So we know that maritime shipping is one of the cleanest, most efficient ways that you can move cargo, but there's a lot of work to do. So as we start talking about sustainability and the environment, we've got to start first with the people and changing the way that they see things, the way that they do their work. And so preparing them for the needs and working with our partners around the Great Lakes region to prepare them. Those are some of the things that we're working on. Also, again, going back to that cross-training our staff, making it redundant, because when you've got 21 people, it's not uncommon to have one person who knows how to do this one thing. And if they're gone, nobody knows that that one thing needs to be done. We needed to get away from that, right? And so really trying to cross-train and make sure that we had some redundancies in our department where it made sense. And also, one of the big things that we've done, we realized as a city department, we're not a community serving agency. Our business is not directly with residents, right? We work with businesses. And so how do we kind of elevate our profile with the community? How important the port is? Well, one way we did that is by exposing young people to the maritime industry. We've done a lot of that this year. What I found in going to different conferences and events with my colleagues is that a lot of them came into maritime because their dad or their uncle or their aunt, somebody was exposed to the industry. Well, if you got young people in Milwaukee who don't have someone who's in the industry, how do we get them involved, right? We've got a lot of people. I mean, this year alone in the Great Lakes region, I could think of a handful of high-level Great Lakes professionals who are going to be retiring. Well, we don't have people to replace them if we're not exposing young people. So this year we did the first ever Port Leadership and Career Summit. So that top picture you see, those young people there with Mayor Johnson, they came down, they spent the day at the port. They got to talk to the mayor because I think that's a big deal. Kids should have access to their elected officials, and we encouraged them to take selfies, and we posted it all over social media and encouraged them to go and talk about it, right? So that's one way. But also, we took them around and we let each of the tenants kind of share a little bit about what they did. So they had some really cool things set up for the students where they talked about the commodities, where they come from, how they get here. And then I think the thing that really topped the afternoon off was the SS Alpina was docked in Port Milwaukee. We took all the kids on the ship. They took a tour. They were up on the bridge. They were all over the ship, down in the engine room. They had lunch with the captain. So these are things that they'll remember. And as they start thinking about careers, they'll remember, wait a minute, there was somebody on that vessel that did this. There's somebody that did that. There's somebody at the port that does it. So we're really trying to elevate our profile, right? We also want to talk about the organization, right? So how do we get back to the more methodical, data-driven decision making? First of all, we have to be collecting it in a way that makes sense, not on paper, right? One of my finance staff is here, and she'll tell you she gets a stack of paper every month that she has to do billing from, and we're getting away from that, right? So we're working right now with the city and with some other partners to look at ways that we can do that. We're also restructuring our contracting process. One of the things I also found is that at the port, we're working with the same vendors over and over again. Well, the reason is because we're limiting how we do outreach, right? So now we're utilizing the tools that we have. We're using e-notify. We're directing people when we interact with them rather than taking their business card and throwing it in a drawer. We send them an email, show them how to sign up. And so now our reach has gotten better. That makes us more competitive when we're doing bidding. That means that our prices are likely going to be lower because people know there's more than one person who can handle that work or who's interested in that work. And then sustaining and growing the business. We are always looking to pursue new networking opportunities. One of the things that we've really tried to be intentional about is getting into other rooms. I think Port Milwaukee's got a great reputation in the maritime industry and in the Great Lakes region, but there's too many people locally and in our immediate network that don't know about us or don't know what we offer. And so we're working to change that. And that means getting into rooms like these. So thank you all again for helping us to kind of, take another step in the right direction. But I'm talking about folks also like the MMAC and M7 and folks who are really marketing the region, helping them to understand that while our name is Port Milwaukee, we are really a regional asset. And so we want everybody around us who has a maritime need to be looking at us to be able to meet those needs. We're also looking to explore opportunities with new partners all across levels of government. We've done really well partnering with the state of Wisconsin. They do a lot with grant support with us. The DNR works with us on some of our environmental issues. I shouldn't say issues. That's not the best word, but some of our initiatives. That's a better word. And then also collaborating with stakeholder groups like folks in this room. We know that there are people who have different interests and have different ideas about what should happen at Port Milwaukee. So we really want to engage with different audiences and really be able to understand so that when we do make decisions, they're holistic decisions, they're considered of multiple perspectives and not just limited to the 21 people that work at Port Milwaukee. So maintaining and growing. Again, we did have some momentum when I stepped in as port director. So we want to just maintain that momentum and keep growing, right? So I'm sure some of you or everybody in this room, I'm sure, has likely heard about the South Shore Cruise Dock project. So we have cruising, Great Lakes cruising has really elevated our profile in the community, right? That's the one thing that makes sense to people. If you're not in shipping, you really don't care how the salt got here, right? As long as it's on the truck when it snows, right? But the cruise ships, oh, I could see that, right? Wait a minute, there's a cruise ship in my city. So when we do those posts on social media, we're getting a lot of traction. We're getting people that want to know when is the ship coming in. Madison Goldbeck, who's here, who's our communications officer, she's done a great job of really trying to manage that and help people understand this is great. This is when it's coming in. Here's some of the restrictions we have, though, because we're still maritime, right? But doing that in a way that the public feels engaged and invited and welcome to participate in what we're doing. The dock that we're going to build is going to be, if you're familiar with our property at all, Lake Express has a terminal building, and immediately east of that is a vacant lot. And that is the space that we're looking to construct this cruise dock. And then eventually, once the dock is up and running, then we'll go back and we'll think about like what types of development that we'll look at there. And that's where that stakeholder engagement is really going to be important. With the project, we're going to basically address some really basic needs of the dock, but the development is really where it's going to come in, and we'll be able to do more for the community itself. Intermodal freight transportation. I've heard a lot of folks ask about, during my time, ask about intermodal and when is containers coming. We don't handle containers right now, and a lot of the I guess the barricades or the barriers to doing that have to do with infrastructure locally. So I know there's an appetite. There's a lot of discussion happening around that. So those are conversations that we're having with different partners who could be involved, and looking to see if there's a way to kind of get back into the container game. Um, of course, the other thing when I talk about us having vacant parcels at the port, the one challenge that we do have is most of those parcels are inland, so they're not directly adjacent to the water. So really trying to think about how we use the space that we have so we can prepare if something like that were to happen, so that we're ready, right? Environmental sustainability. The Great Lakes shipping community and the Great Lakes region is really looking at how do we, as a region, prepare for what we believe is coming. The concern we have is that the people who say something's coming can't tell us what it is, right? And so we're preparing for things we really don't know. But really just trying to make sure that we're discussing things, and as we do new development, we're keeping things open so that we can pivot when we are able to identify, is this going to be electric? Is it going to be hydrogen? What are we going to be doing in the near future? Um, and then collaboration and business development. Again, being in this room is one of the ways that we're doing that. We're trying to get out into other to audiences that aren't traditional to us. I think when we were doing Port 101s before, we really saw a lot of folks who were directly attached to the maritime business or the maritime community. And we really want to talk to the folks in the business community, because we want to know, what does it take to get your business? If you're in a business that we can serve, and if you're not, we want to make sure that you know our name, so that when you're talking to somebody who we can serve, you remember to let them know. And so that's kind of, I know I talked about people. They said that this was a different kind of room, so I really wanted to leave some time for questions and kind of let you guys drive what you'd like to know about Port Milwaukee. Thank you for your time and for allowing me to be here, and I'll invite any questions that anyone may have.
Thank you, Jackie, and thank you for your leadership. I think you're really going to be making a difference over there. So I'm going to pass the mic over to Tom Gale. Got a lot of people here today.
Oh boy, that's a line, huh?
Thank you for being here with us today. A couple of years ago, through the port director, previous port director, we arranged a tour of the Stewart Court, 1,000-foot laker down there. Fascinating tour. Can we arrange that through you again?
Let me ask. Make sure I get your information.
I will. Thank you.
I'm going to suggest that everyone say your name when you come up, so Jackie knows who you are, and the live stream people can know as well.
Thank you. My name's Chris Hinrichs. Can you talk a little bit about what's going on? I believe it's an MMSD project, but that area just, what would it be, north of
Our building?
well, north of the Lake Express, where the fill and
Yep.
all that kind of stuff is going on?
Yes. So I'm going to give y'all a little alphabet soup at the port. So you know that Lake Express is built on a CDF, confined disposal facility. Next to that is because dredging is a big part of our business, we have to make sure that the drafts are deep enough. And so next to that is another facility where the Army Corps of Engineers, as they do dredging, they will put the materials in that facility. What you see being built is now the dredge material management facility. And why that one is different is because the sediment that will go into that is actually contaminated. So there are legacy contaminants in all three of the rivers. And the EPA, MMSD, Port Milwaukee, DNR, there's a lot of people involved in this project cleaning that up. So right now they're constructing that facility. And once it's constructed, the EPA will do the work to clean up the rivers. It'll be a long time. Probably, I don't think I'll be in this job when it's filled. That's how long it'll take. But eventually that will become usable land, just like the Lake Express facility has become. But that's part of a large cleanup project.
Thank you. My name is Megan Holbrook. There's been discussion of the idea of taking down the 794 that goes through the heart of the city. I know obviously that Port Milwaukee would be affected, and your tenants might be affected by losing that high-speed connection to the rest of the interstate. Has Port Milwaukee taken a position on it? And if it does happen, do you have an alternate route that's planned?
Yeah, so one of the things the port has done well, and I don't know if it's us or if it's WisDOT, but we're great partners with them. And so WisDOT will be making the actual decision on what happens with that. I will say we are engaged with those conversations. Department of City Development is also engaged, Department of Public Works. So there's a lot of city stakeholders who are involved. And so we're meeting and looking, really it won't be a decision that we make. We'll be looking to Mayor Johnson to make a decision on what we'd like to see happen there, but he's aware of all of the different interests and the different stakeholders in terms of the city that are involved and how it will impact us. I will also say that our tenants and I'm trying to get away from calling them that. So part of that shifting the perspective is calling them business partners, right? So our business partners are also engaged. And so they're coming to the table with what they think should happen there, what will be the pivot, because no matter what happens, we're going to have to pivot even temporarily, right? And so really making sure that they're aware of what's going on, what are those timelines like, and then planning their business accordingly so that we see the least amount of impact possible.
Congratulations on your work with changing the culture in the port. My name is Jeff
We're still
Spoler.
working on it, by the way. It's not different yet.
It's a work in progress always.
Yep.
This gets at your comment early on. You said looking at Milwaukee's port through a conservative lens, which we've done from a business, from a government standpoint, and trying to change that lens a little bit. You talked about infrastructure challenges beyond the port. Could be trucks, could be air, et cetera. And then going beyond Milwaukee and the region to find out what others are doing. Do you have any thoughts? We've had some announcements on Mitchell Field recently, and we know that there's an explosion of interest in logistics between here and Chicago. Do you have any thoughts of what you and others in this region can do to see who's doing a better job than us on interconnecting those different modals, realizing the opportunity we have to be a logistics hub out of Chicago?
Sure. So thank you. We have in this industry something we call co-opetition, meaning we cooperate with our competitors. So there's an association called the American Great Lakes Ports Association, where all of the ports in the Great Lakes come together on a regular basis. We're all part of this group, and we discuss those very things, right? So we try to stay aware of what each other is working on. We usually try to beat each other to the punch, but we also know that in order for the region to be successful, we have to market it as a region and really put all of our thinking hats together and all of our resources together to think about policy, to advocate for funding and for different types of support. So we try to stay on top of that. One of the things that Port Milwaukee has also done in terms of tourism, because of course commercial cargo movement is our primary business. We've partnered with people who know how to move cargo with an attitude. Those are cruise passengers, because those are the cargo that moves and has an opinion and will tell you how they feel. So to get that feedback and make sure that we're doing it well, we're partnering with folks like Visit Milwaukee, with the Great Lakes Shore Excursion, people who work in that space and have done so for a number of years, to really learn from them, make sure that we're in line with what other folks are doing. So we collaborate where we can. The Mitchell Airport is actually part of that group as well. So they're at the table. We're having those conversations. Absolutely.
Hi, my name is Erin Richards. Great presentation. Really enjoyed it. I'm going to ask you a question about something that predates you, but I'm hoping maybe you know the financial implications of it now. About 4 years ago, there was a $31 million agricultural export facility built here. Tammy Baldwin was in support. Is that delivering on the financial gains and connecting more farmers from Wisconsin and their goods to the rest of the region?
So as with this industry, a lot of things move slow, but they are moving good. So that's the DeLong facility, the Agricultural Maritime Export Facility. And we're working. So that's a good example of where we're doing some collaboration. So we're working with them to see what conferences, when we go out and we're marketing and we're networking, where do we need to be saying your name? What rooms do we need to be saying your name in? So we work with them in terms of that. There's right now a trade mission happening in Morocco where our staff did not go, but someone from the Great Lakes and Lawrence Seaway went. So we got brochures from DeLong to send out, with that team, so that when they're having those conversations, DeLong is in the conversation, right? They have had, I want to say, about 8 or 9 vessels that have gone out from the port this year, but there's still a lot of momentum they're building. I can say we've hosted a number of grain export associations. So there's a lot of interest. It's really about really establishing those trade routes. So what we do know is that when a vessel comes in, it's more efficient and more economical if it's going in and out full. And so what they're trying to establish now is what is happening in Europe or what is being shipped out that needs to come here that they can offload and then use that same vessel to take their products back. So there's a lot of that coordination that's happening, but absolutely that facility is up and running and actually doing so well that we got a second PIDP grant to expand it already because they're going to increase their capacity to be able to handle multiple types of ag products.
Hi.
Hi.
My name's Antoine Carter.
You know, we
Very
we should have a conversation about that over a coffee or
We should. So interesting since we're family now.
Okay.
Your little cousin, my son, went through the mayor's program and got
Okay.
a tour. So I think there's that level of exposure for younger individuals. Can you talk about pathways and pipelines for those out of school youth or those who are not 12 years old and are looking to actually dive into the things that get them to working at the
Yeah, so we're engaged in conversations. So I'll say there is a group, the National Academic Foundation. There's a group right now out of Madison High School. I'm participating with that group to try to work with them to see what kind of program we can develop. There's also one of our regional associations, the Inland Rivers Ports and Terminals Group, has a program called We Work the Waterways. And what they do is they're doing some of that exposure and they focus more on high school students, but they take maybe 200 high school students and there's this whole day that they're doing kind of what we did with the younger students, but on a larger scale. So they're doing that. That program is going to be here working with MPS in May of 25. So that's coming. Also have had conversations with MATC about trying to figure out where can we maybe do some internships, where can we do some partnerships. I know the cities also has some programs where there are I don't know what the right word is because that's not my community, like my area of interest or expertise. There's been some where they work with people who are having trouble finding jobs. They've had some placements at the port. So that was very early on. We haven't seen any at the port specifically, but I know they're still working with that program through some other agencies. So there's a lot of opportunities. And as we have conversations, I know that's one of the mayor's priorities. So he continues to, challenge us to see where we can do more. We've got some internship it is internship positions at the port that we haven't used in the last few years. We're looking to maybe reestablish those and see where we can support some people. Yeah.
There didn't seem to be a lot about financial goals in your vision statement. Could you talk a little bit about that? And specifically, at the present time, is there a net revenue gain to the city or a net revenue expense from port operations?
Excellent question. So it's important to understand the port is what we call an enterprise fund. So that means for every dollar we want to spend, we have to raise one. Usually throughout the year, we raise more money than we spend. And because we have to present our budget to the city like every other city department. So we have a dollar amount that we're set to spend. Our revenues often exceed that. So I didn't talk a lot about that, but that is important to know. So thank you for that question.
Hi, Jackie. Dan Nelson. Can you explain to this group how Milwaukee came to be a turnaround destination for what you called cargo with attitude? I've not heard that about cruisers, but as a cruise destination and turnaround port, can you explain how Milwaukee got that over places like Chicago or otherwise?
Yeah. So, and thank you. That's a great question. Chicago is often the city that most people compare us to because they think for some reason they're better than us. I don't think so. But the reason that, so usually Navy Pier will come up and people want to know why aren't ships going to Navy Pier? Well, part of it is when there's a cruise ship docked, there are restrictions. That means Navy Pier would have to basically stop its operations and they don't want to do that. So good for us, right? That they'll come here. The other option that that was available in Chicago is about 45 minutes outside of the city, which is also not attractive, which is why we really were pushing for this new dock, because what we see happening now, right now, Milwaukee is the turnaround. We're the Great Lakes cruise destination. And what turnaround means is that there is a group that will end their itineraries in Milwaukee, and there will be a new group that will start. So that means hotel stays, that means restaurants, that means shopping, not just a day excursion, right? So we do most of the cruise visits in Milwaukee are turnaround. So we are getting double the bang for our buck, right? Whereas the other cities are seeing just one group. So what we've talked about, because there are other Great Lakes sports that are gearing up to try and compete with us for that business. And so while we're able to serve biking at the heavy lift dock, it's not very pretty, right? When you're the only gang in town, you can afford not to be pretty. But when other people are starting to gear up, you got to have both. And so that was really why we want to establish that new dock. So they're still coming. People are still gearing up. But then we're also gearing up. One of the things we're working on right now, and actually with your group, so thank you for that, is a cruise brochure. So targeted to cruise companies, and then going after them to let them know what we offer in Milwaukee, working again with Visit Milwaukee and our other partners to really market the region, but specifically the city of Milwaukee. Yeah.
Hi, Jackie. My name is Elizabeth Draper. You mentioned earlier that the port manages the riverways as well as the Great Lakes. And I wasn't aware of that. Can you say a little bit more about what kind of business is being conducted along the riverways, where it's coming from? And
Yeah, so the port with and I have to say we're in the middle of right now doing a study because we haven't done as well on that front, right? So we're working with Chicago and the Port of Burns Harbor and Port Milwaukee. The three of us are getting together to commission a study to look at why we're not getting as much traffic, because Port Milwaukee is really the northernmost point on that system. So we're not seeing as much, but what does come up every so often is barge traffic. So we see some barges, but just not as frequently as we like. So we're really looking to dig into that. We've really engaged with the group, that advocacy group, to really understand how they do business, what kinds of commodities are being moved, and then we need to identify in our region what commodities are needed. Is that a path? Does the seaway make more sense? And I think for one of the reasons we don't see as much river traffic is because when you're talking about cargo shipping, volumes is really what you want. And so because you can move more through the seaway, that tends to be more attractive. But if there are commodities where it makes more sense to go the river, we want to make sure that they know about us too. Yeah.
What are the top three commodities that are delivered into the port and then delivered out?
Sure. So salt. You've seen those big black tarps. A lot of that is salt. And the reason we're trying to get away from that, because I mean, we could probably fill the port with salt, and we don't want to. For one, salt is weather dependent. So we've had a couple of mild winters. We haven't seen a lot of that move. Our numbers are down, revenue's down. So we get away from that. The second one is going to be steel. We see a lot of European steel coming in, some for tin making, some for construction, a lot of different types of things. And then there's a number of different commodities, but the third one we're really focusing on is going to be that ag. We had the Kofco grain terminal at the port. They weren't on our property, but they were at least moving product out of the port. When that sold, and we knew it wasn't going to come back, it was like DeLong's timing was perfect, because not only were they going to be able to move ag products, but now they positioned us to go after that grant to be able to expand that facility because we could demonstrate the need. So I would say salt, steel, and ag are the top three. Yeah.
Hi, my name is Ann Navin, and I have a question about how you partner or work with people who are organizations who use the waterways for recreation primarily, and how they would be impacted if more barges and more traffic.
Yeah, and so I think so we work, of course, with the Coast Guard. They regulate a lot of that. We work with the Navy. They don't do a whole lot here, but they are a port tenant business partner. But I think just kind of staying engaged with those groups. We usually are interacting with the yacht clubs, to talk to them if they've got concerns. We've got a relationship there. I don't think we've seen a lot of it. Our harbor master is usually talking with the Coast Guard about concerns that they may have. If there's going to be something that might hinder recreational boating, we try to get out in front of that and really prepare people. but try to minimize it as much as we can. I don't think we've seen a lot of that other than when the convention was here, the Republican National Convention, we had to do some closures, but that didn't have anything to do with us. So that was a security thing. So, but I think it's really minimal. We don't see a lot of impact to recreational boating.
Who are your primary business partners?
So one that I always, so let me say this. We have 3 sectors of business. We have the commercial, we have the recreational, we have the tourism. And I always try to say the recreational folks' names in rooms because people don't always know that Summerfest or Milwaukee World Festivals, Harbor House, Discovery World, and Lake Express. So those are recreational partners that we have. And the way we differentiate them is because we don't offer a lot of services, additional services. They basically rent land and we do maybe some collaborative marketing where we can. But then some that you might recognize are going to be Cargill, Kinder Morgan is a stevedore, Compass Minerals is there, Logistech, which used to be Federal Marine Terminals, you might be familiar with. So those are the main folks at the port. Was that your question or are you talking about beyond that? Okay.
Hi, Jackie.
Hello.
Tia Torhorst. So you have a room full of captive business leaders in Milwaukee. Selfishly, I will benefit from this question too. How can they help you?
Well, listen. Well, let me help them help you. Y'all know Harbor District is a nonprofit. But what I will say with the port, I think being engaged with us, helping us to understand what your concerns are, because I think residents have a voice in what we do, and we're trying to be better about getting in spaces where we can understand that. But if you have concerns or questions or ideas, please do reach out to us. We're happy to engage in those conversations and think about how we can work with you around whatever it is. And when I say that, I'm thinking more about, I know I talked to a gentleman earlier who, was talking about, safety with the water, making sure invasive species are not coming in, things like that, if there are concerns like that. But if you're looking to do business with us, our website has, all of our available parcels out there. If there's somebody who's interested or somebody who doesn't know about us and you want us to have a conversation with them, we're happy to do that as well. So.
My husband told me I had to find out how many ships came in and out of the port in 2024.
Tell your husband, don't test me like that. I don't know because we haven't done our numbers for the end of the year yet, but I'm trying to see if I could cheat with my finance person, but she so last year I would say I want to say it was about almost 400 large vessels that came in and out of the port, but don't quote me on that. I wasn't ready for data.
All right, I won't quote you on that.
But I can get that information though, and our annual report is on our website too. It'll be in there.
Okay, well, thank you. If there are no more questions, I think we'll turn it back over to Kent. And again, thank you for your leadership, Jackie.